All right, so let's get into it and unpack this week's true crime. So this week is covering March 22nd through the 28th. And in my 6th episode, I'm going to be telling you about the Naomi Ariane case, which is new. And it's moving really fast. The updates on the Delphi case, which was from 2017. I will be telling you about the Murdoch case. We have an update. There was a filing. Kind of interesting. The Valo case, the Morphew case. A little bit about what's happened this week with the West case, the parents, and Ethan Crumley. So, all right, that's what we're going to be talking about. Case number 1. Naomi Ariane. Now, it's spelled with an I, but it's pronounced Ariane. Naomi is a 18-year-old beautiful girl. She actually spent most of her life with her parents and family. Her dad is a diplomat. She spent it overseas. And she is in the middle of a family. It's not a blended family, but it has a family of she has 2 much older siblings. And then she has some younger adopted brothers, interestingly, from Ukraine. And she turned 18 this past August of 2021. She was really interested in having a more free life where she could drive a car, which is kind of ironic, right? She wanted more safety. She lived in Moscow. She lived in, I think they lived in Germany and South Africa, but she went to the International American School, and she was always sort of kept within a sort of proximity of, where it was safe. So she didn't have a typical upbringing where she ran around and hung out with her friends and drove a car and took road trips. So her older brother, his last name is Valo. He offered, she could stay with him in Findlay, Nevada. Very nice, small town apparently, safe. And she got a job working for Panasonic. And the thing was, she did get her driver's license. She would drive. The job was in Panasonic. It was in Reno. So she would catch a shuttle bus at the Walmart in Findlay. So what was reported, it actually occurred at 5:30. We know exactly when because it was caught on videotape at the Walmart parking lot. It was Saturday, the 12th of March. She was waiting. She had stopped at and was photographed at a convenience store right around 5:09 before she went and parked her car, and this was her habit. She was, waiting in her car for the shuttle bus that would come at 5:30, and she spent that time, she was a good person getting there early so she wouldn't miss the bus, and then would spend that extra time, just getting ready for work, having a snack, whatever. I don't know if she got a coffee, but that's what I would be doing. But she was just getting geared up for work and scrolling on all her social media. Well, she went missing. She did not show up for work. And because, the work called, her brother was alerted, and it was, she didn't show up for work. She didn't show up at home that night. He went to where he knew she parked. They pulled the video. Walmart security was very helpful, I guess, to the brother. And then they started making, the report to the police, because on that videotape, you can see a man in a hooded sweatshirt. He sort of walks around. He comes out from an area that they said was known as a homeless encampment, but he did not look homeless. He walked around the parking lot on the edge, seemed to be stalking her car, looking at it, specifically. The family reported, they got chills because they could see, he was watching her. Then what he did was he walked past another car through their headlights, so somebody did see this man. Again, so if you were at the Walmart at 5 o'clock on March 12th, Saturday, call the police in Fenley. Call the Las Vegas, it's the county police that is in charge of this. They are looking for more information about what was seen. That you can see the man walking to her car door, and what he did, it seems like maybe her car door wasn't locked. Or maybe he just stands there and seems to force open the door, and she looks frightened. So her family reports, like you could tell from her movements, that she was not feeling okay about this, and stiffly moved over into the passenger seat, and then the car leaves. The car then was found 2 days later, and when they found the car, so then they were looking for her by this time, they have videotape of the truck leaving that had dropped off the car, and the truck was very distinctive. I'm not going to go into exactly what it looked like because they found the truck and they found the man attached to it. He is a 41-year-old resident of Fallon, Nevada, which is close to the area. His name is Troy Driver. He is 41. So he is in custody. So they know that he was the one in the car. They have not found Naomi. Saturday, on the 26th of March, there was, they went and looked around the area that she was taken from, and they did not find anything. So here's one of the big problems. Naomi was obviously taken to a second location, and we all know, right, the second location, you don't ever want to be taken to a second location. This man has a record. In 1997, which was 25 years ago, he was only 17, but he was part of a group that lured, I believe they knew the person, but lured another person to a car, and did the big M to them, and then took care of the body out in the desert area around there, put him in a ditch. Now the person was found within 4 days, but, and he was a juvenile but tried to believe as adult, so he did do time, but I think he served 15 years, so he's, been out. So this person has that type of record of violent crime. So that's not great for the family, but we don't know. If you are in the Fenley, Reno, Fallon, Las Vegas, when I think of Nevada, of course I think of Las Vegas, sorry, but Reno is not near Las Vegas. If you're in the Reno area, the Fenley, Fallon area, please be on the lookout for strange noises coming from large containers and, from a locked shed. She has limited time, obviously. Now he's been arrested, so she, if alive, would be, captured somewhere and would need water soon. So they're looking for her. There's going to be an update at noon here, Eastern Standard Time, 9 o'clock their time. I'm going to tell you everything about this week, and then I will be back at the very end to give you an update about what that press conference said. So let's pray for Naomi and a safe return. It's moving fast. We still have time. All right. Case 2. So there's an update on the Delphi murders. The Delphi murders happened in 2017. The bodies were found on Valentine's Day, which is horrible. They had been looking all night. They were 2 young girls, 13 and 14, best friends, had gone to a local park and were near a bridge area. They also, one of the girls, I believe it was Libby, it's Libby and Abby, they used Snapchat to get evidence for what had happened. And it's grainy, it's a Snapchat video. Snapchat does not die. It lives on the servers where Snapchat is, even if it's off your phone and their phone. So don't think that this was very smart of Libby to do. And you see a larger man say something like girls down the hill. You should see this hill in this park. This bridge is called High Bridge. It is over a cavern in this park. It is a huge downward angle. I mean, and they were found hurt and the big M. So horrible. So at first, it was very unclear what had happened. There was obviously a predator on the loose. So there was a person of interest found and spoken to, and then spoken to again. And finally, this person was arrested on August 29th in 2020 because in looking at all the evidence, so it started with Snapchat, and they looked at phone messages of the girls that they could get from the cloud. They looked at text messages, and Libby had been talking to a boy named Anthony Schatz. So, and it's been talked about ad nauseum, but Anthony Schatz was not Anthony Schatz. That was catfishing. It was really an older man named Keegan Klein who lived with his father and who talked to young women, underage children. So, after speaking to him, because they didn't have any direct evidence about what happened with Abby and Libby, but they had a lot going into his house and doing, they got a warrant. They found evidence on his computer of other Josh Duggery type things. So he has 30 counts of things related to exploitation and the thing that rhymes with corn and solicitation, all of underage humans there. Not good stuff. Not obviously a predator. So he's been in jail for the last year and a half, which is good. The last update about Delphi, I believe it was episode 1, the Indiana State Police Superintendent, Dave Carter, had come out and said that it was, at this 5th anniversary, he just wanted to let everybody know they were still investigating this and that they were making progress, and he thought that there would be an arrest soon. So now here we are on March. They announced this. It was published on the 24th. So it was published by podcasters. 2 podcasters from the podcast Murder Sheet, which I hadn't been aware of, but which I will listen to now. One is Ms. Kane. It's A-I-N-E, but it has an accent on the A. So Anane Kane? That can't be right. And Kevin Greenlee. So Ms. Kane is a journalist, and Mr. Greenlee is a lawyer. And if you know anything about the law or follow any law podcasts like Emily D. Baker or maybe Scott Wright, you will know that they talk about, you can look up case numbers. Emily D. Baker is a wonderful follow for, she does pop culture, so a lot of it's entertainment based or whatever's in the zeitgeist of cases. She is a wonderful podcast because she specifically talks to the regular person in words that a regular non-lawyer can understand, but she sort of teaches you through these cases about how the law works. And she often looks up law cases through something called Pacer, which costs a lot of money if you don't have a subscription to it. Very expensive, and lawyers use this. Anyway, so I'm assuming this Mr. Greenlee, so he's just looking, he follows this case, he's looking up, he sees a document uploaded in the case, clicks on it. It is a 194-page document that is a transcribed interview with this Mr. Keegan Klein about Libby and Abby and evidence that they had found. And let me just tell you, what is included in this transcript is chilling, and I believe confirms that he is the person. That's my speculation. That is my opinion based on the evidence. But in the evidence, what Mr. Klein said to investigators, and what they were talking about, the evidence that they had, one thing that we didn't know before, this Anthony Schatz texted Libby and asked to meet her at Highbridge the next day. So let me just say that again. This monster, in my opinion, his phone and the fake persona he was using, Anthony Schatz, was texting Libby the night before she went to the park and was unalived, and they discussed and agreed to meet at the bridge, the Highline Bridge in the park, the bridge upon which the person then walked. Now, I took a picture of the article with the mugshot of Mr. Keegan Klein and the picture that was taken off the phone and disseminated to the public to say, do you know this man who is assumed to be involved in these deaths? I think the body shape, allegedly, in my opinion, speculation, looks just like this guy. And his phone was talking to the girl. It seems to me that's pretty damning evidence, in my opinion. So we will learn more about this. So the funny thing is, this was uploaded as just a document. This lawyer happened to look at it. He let the police know, hey, there's do you know this is up there? And it was then taken down. But I obtained a copy from an article, and I assume you can too, because it's there to be downloaded. And it is the copy that the podcasters, they went ahead and took out the any innocent people's names involved other than, you know what I mean? So it's redacted for those people. 194 pages, and it doesn't look good for Mr. Klein. Now, he's trying to blame his dad because he said his dad also, he was living with his father. His dad was strong. His dad looks like that. I think anybody who's lying about who they are, who is meeting with children for, soliciting pics, I think they lie about, they'd throw their dad under the bus. In my opinion, allegedly, just my speculation. So, we will know more, I guess, when we know more. The authorities, now they haven't, they could come down on the podcasters and make sure they're, they're allowing this to be out there. So why? Why is this out there? Is it an oops accident so that the public knows more? I don't know. But I do know that he looks good for it. Keegan Klein looks good for this case. But he is locked up, so that's good for the community. He has a pretrial conference for all the kitty stuff. His 30 allegations. There's a pretrial conference scheduled still, I think, for April 14th. And then his trial is supposed to be this fall, September 26th to the 30th. So, and we'll see what they add on to that and if it changes anything. But it is good to know that things eventually come home to roost and people do pay. And don't do the crime, because you're going to do the time. Okay. Our third case. Mr. Alec, even though it looks like Alex. Murdoch, even though it looks like Murdaugh. Alec Murdaugh is a good old boy from South Cackalack whose whole family has been involved in law. His brothers are still in law with him at his practice. Well, he's not part of the practice anymore because, oops. committed all those embezzlements. So he, on Thursday, March 24th, submitted, what do we call it? I mean, it wasn't really a confession. He filed something with the court, sort of like, this is what I'm willing to say, to take responsibility for his housekeeper, the Murdoch case. Let me just start again. So in the Murdoch case, there are accidental deaths around this family, and then there's the murder of his wife and his son on his property. There was a tangential somehow murder of somebody who knew his oldest son, the only other Murdoch alive right now. And then there's all this fraud and corruption around insurance and law. So, and Alec was a lawyer, in part, like his family firm and other friends, a very established firm, and they were known for getting huge settlements. So apparently he is now willing to take responsibility. I mean, his best friend, Corey Plumbing, last week got indicted on 18 counts. They have copious amounts of evidence. I mean, he's not saying anything, in my opinion, speculatively, that we don't already know. So basically it's like, you got me. Which I thought was weird, because he said, yeah, and I want the court to uphold the judgment of the money that he got in the insurance scam that was to go to the family, but instead he and Corey split it between themselves, I guess, $4.3 million. Yeah, that's good. I want them to have that $4.3 million. Okay, now if we know anything about Alec, and this is just my opinion, just my speculation, he doesn't do anything that doesn't serve his needs. So, his friend is caught red-handed. They've got documents showing that they were all in on this. There's even a judge that was involved who so far has not been charged as far as I know right now. Oh, and now, hey, it's all good. Let's settle this. Oh, one condition. He had one condition. What's his condition? That whoever is the judge in charge of this, they decide about how the money gets doled out, and that, let's see, hold on. Let me say this exactly how it was written. So, he wants the judge who is in charge of the distribution of the receivership estate. So he doesn't want the receivership person. He wants the judge to determine in his or her sole discretion, and I think that's the key word, the amount of payment, if any, which the Satterfields are entitled. Okay, so I think, and by the way, the Satterfield lawyer responded saying they do not agree to that stipulation, and I think probably because they're due more than what they were paid. So as soon as this all came out, I mean, there's like murders and maybe other murders and all this, and then money, and then he tried to kill himself. All this crap comes out. The firm that includes his brothers right away made restitution to the Satterfields. Like, that money that we took that we weren't supposed. Hey, don't worry. In fact, we're not even going to take a fee. This is how I understand it, anyways. Allegedly, my speculation. Just please, we're so sorry. But the thing is, this was over a very extended period, so let's just talk about interest on $4.3 million. And it was a scam. So Alec did, he took advantage of the situation. He and Corey didn't tell about their conflicts of interest. They would have never told if they wouldn't have gotten caught. There's all these extra things that legally in a suit would get you more money. Pain and suffering, for God's sakes, right? Okay, so that whole weird thing about the sole discretion of a judge. Okay, Alec knows all the judges. That's the whole thing about this case. The Murdochs are embedded within that community. They have been there forever. They are the Good Old Boy Network. In my opinion, speculation, look, he doesn't want to pay any more money, and how bad is what he did that they're willing just to hand over $4.3 million, and hey, let's just call it a day. They don't get any more from the receivership. Quick aside, so what's a receivership? In case you haven't been watching all this, which is why I'm telling you, right? That's my whole purpose here. So a receivership is when someone's really effed up, there is a person assigned to get into all their finances, find everything they own, all their assets, try to keep them from selling their assets. We spoke about in episode 5 last week, how he was trying to go, hey, the Moselle property, even though I inherited it from my wife when she died. No, I don't want that. No. Because then it would go to Buster, and then it would be out of the reach of the receivers to get it and to help use that sale of that property then to, for all the debts that he's incurred, all the lawsuits that are either filed now or will be decided in the future. So if he's willing to give up $4.3 million, do you think that probably the Satterfields are due more? My speculation, my opinion, I think probably, because in my opinion, Alec doesn't do anything that doesn't help out Alec. Oh, and by the way, let me just tell you about Alec's brothers and his friends in the firm. They were all fooled. They just didn't have enough safeguards in place, and they are doing that now. But they just want all of us to know. They can't believe for 10 years Alec was just pulling the wool over their eyes. It's just him. It's not them. It's him. Just one him. Not all of them. So don't look at them for any other similar types of schemes, because they didn't know. They don't know anything. It was just Alec. And if you buy that, I have some swampland in South Cac to sell you. Again, that's all just my opinion of the situation. For all I know, they're all clean as the driven snow. Alec, he's a Svengali. I mean, he obviously very clever, right? I mean, look at his schemes about what he did with his friend, and I hurt myself. Blood on my head. I need to go by an air ambulance, which is funny because there was no blood and there was no injury to his head. You be the judge. All right. The next case update that we have this week on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, in the out in Idaho in the Valo Daybell case. We had Chad Daybell had a hearing, and it was rather long. All lawyers were present, including Archibald. So that's Lori's lawyer, and we haven't seen him because Lori's case is stayed, and she has been determined to be incompetent, so she can't take part in her own defense. That's what incompetence in Idaho means. But Archibald was there, so that's interesting because we should know any second if Lori's been deemed competent or not. The hearing was based on motions by Chad's lawyer, John Pryor. So, John Pryor feels that the charges should be dismissed because he feels that the grand jury that indicted Chad and Lori back in, oh my goodness, what was that, 2020? All right. we're up to the Daybell Valo update. So on March 23rd, Chad had a hearing with all the lawyers, his lawyers present, the state's lawyers present, as well as John Archibald, who was present, which is interesting because Lori is supposed to be incompetent and unable to take part in her defense, and so everything on her side previously had been stayed. And we didn't see her lawyer, but now Archibald is joining in this hearing, and this hearing was about John Pryor, who is Chad's lawyer, has a motion to dismiss the case, and he is alleging prosecutorial misconduct and juror bias and everything that he can throw at the idea that his client was unfairly indicted by this grand jury. So, one important thing to understand, I believe it's in any state there's two ways to get indicted. One way is by a grand jury, and you may have heard the saying, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. A grand jury is an impaneled jury. Usually it's a grand means big. You know, like a grande coffee is bigger than a tall. It is more than a regular jury, which is called a petite jury, a little jury of 12 people, like we're used to thinking about. A grand jury is more. And sometimes they're impaneled before there's even, I believe, a case, and then they're called. So if you're picked to be on a grand jury and there's a case that the state thinks should be prosecuted, the grand jury will come in, they'll hear the news, and I don't know if it's by a month or by, it's like you're on a grand jury for a certain number of a period of time, and that when it's over, your time on the grand jury, like, it's over. So it's not called just for specific cases, it's like an impaneled thing. So but when it hears a case, the people in charge of making sure it's fair are just the prosecutor and the judge in charge. It's just the court's side. And it isn't public. It is secret until the indictment comes out. And then deliberations are never really shared. Sometimes the defense can get the names of the people, but it's rather, it's very pro prosecution, which again goes back to you can indict a ham sandwich with a grand jury. The other way to indict is by having a preliminary hearing. If you have a preliminary hearing, both sides get to say, like, who's hearing it. Both sides, not who's hearing it, sorry. I think it's a judge then, only a judge. But both sides get to question each other. So the defense has a little more control, and most importantly, in a preliminary hearing, the defense gets to see what the prosecution's strategy is. Like, what is the narrative they're telling? What do they have? They kind of have to show them their cards more, which is a grand jury indictment, you don't really know. So, of course, the defense would rather have a preliminary hearing. So, John Pryor is saying the grand jury hearing, I don't think it was fair. I think that somehow there was tampering. He's alleging everything that you could allege. But the rules, when you argue, you not just say, this is my theory, like this is what I think went wrong. To prove it, then you say, like, basically, these are the rules, this is what I think they broke, and here's how these rules have been talked about in the past. That's how they fight. That's the argumentation process in a court. So and I am not a lawyer, but from what I understand, John Pryor's argument that there was prosecutorial, it's a hard word to say if you're dyslexic. I don't know if I mentioned I'm the Dyslexic Detective. That the prosecution somehow had some misconduct in who they picked out. And did they know that basically they knew these people were not going to be fair, but still put them in the court. They didn't present things fairly, and that some of the jurors, supposedly they know at least one juror that they said was already biased. Now, the people that I listened to the most about the Valo case, now for the defense side, I listened to Scott Reich because he's very defense oriented, but there's a podcast called Hidden True Crime, and every Friday, Lauren, who was a journalist and is from the area of Idaho and used to be LDS, she has on her partner in crime, Lori Halas. And Lori Halas was a defense attorney as well, but she's writing a book about the Valo Daybell case. And she provides a lot of the background. And so she offered a theory, again, speculation, that Rexburg, Idaho, this area where the grand jury was impaneled, it's very tiny, and these people probably did all know each other. And Lauren, who is LDS from the area, gave their audience a little background in the organization of LDS. It's not like other churches where you can choose what parish or what congregation to go to. It is basically all geographically aligned, and if you live in that area, you go to that church. You go to that LDS temple. So the people in the area would all talk and would probably all know each other. And they were hypothesizing that maybe someone had said something before they were even on the jury and they shouldn't have been on the jury. But here's the thing. In the grand jury, there's extra people. So we don't need to worry, like if one person is bad, like was prejudiced, there's like 15, 20 others. So it's not like a petite or a trial jury where, like when we talked about the GMAX case, one bad juror can like throw the whole court and decision go, okay, well now, that's a mistrial and we have to start again. This isn't that. The other problem is John Pryor was arguing case law related to petite or trial juries, which has much stricter standards of fairness. And it is, let me just tell you, I think I wrote this down. Lori Halas was describing it as that a trial jury is a finder of fact, whereas the grand jury is inferring. Is there enough here to go to trial? Like, does this make sense? Do we have enough that probably this person did it? It's a much lower standard. It's a much higher bar for juries in the trial, the petite juries, the small juries. Every person has to be as non-biased as possible because the defendant gets every opportunity, every advantage, because to lose your liberty is, in this case, it's a death penalty case, to lose your life. I mean, that's the highest punishment we have. But in just indicting somebody, it's a much less high bar. I mean, it's like, well, here's the evidence. Does it look like probably this is the most likely person? Kind of looks like it. Okay, so the things that John Pryor is arguing in the cases he cited tended to be cases, and this is my understanding, just my speculation, about trial juries. So, one thing we know, John Pryor is zealous. We want a defense attorney to be zealous, especially if we are being accused of something, right? So that's not a problem. And he's dogged and he's determined, but John Pryor has never argued a death penalty murder case. This is not his wheelhouse. So this would be his first time. Now Chad can keep him as his lawyer. That's Chad's right because it's a private lawyer. It's not a court-appointed lawyer. So until and if Chad declares himself as indigent, then John Pryor could still be kept on as a court-appointed lawyer because he would know the most about the case and it wouldn't slow things down, so it would help with the efficiency of the case. But then he would have to sit second chair. There would have to be another death-appointed lawyer, like how Lori got Archibald. She got Archibald because her first attorney, Mark Means, was not, he had not tried this type of case, especially in a death penalty case. He's not death penalty qualified. All right, so speaking of Mark Means, if you're on Twitter, Mark Means is on Twitter. And let me just tell you, in my opinion, just speculation, Mark Means is obsessed with Lori and he just can't quit her. He can't. So he's on Twitter arguing with people about, hey, how can Lori even be indicted? She hasn't, how can she get a court date? Because if you remember back last week in episode 5, we talked about the fact that Lori and Chad's case are going to remain to be together. They are not going to be severed like John Pryor had asked. So at this point, Mark Means is like, hey, they're going to go to trial in January of 2023. How's that even possible? Sorry, I read it in a whiny baby boy voice. That's my speculation. So he wants to know if she hasn't been arraigned, because remember, as soon as her charges of unaliving her children were produced by the prosecution, she suddenly, within 6 days, lost her mind, and her lawyer said she had to be declared incompetent. Please look at her, and she was, and so that stopped everything. So she couldn't be arraigned because even though she was in jail, she lost her mind as soon as those charges came, and she was unable. So Mark Means is trying to make a clever thing, and Mark Means is not part of the case anymore. I don't know if he's still even allowed to practice law at all. He was taken off the case because he wasn't honest with the court about a conflict of interest, because he had represented both Lori and Chad, and that meant he couldn't just represent Lori. He had all kinds of issues, and he's continuing these. So that was just an aside, because it's our friend Big E, who does a lot of documentation on cases on YouTube, but he is, if you look up the Docket on Twitter, he also, not only does he give tons of information about cases, especially cases that not everybody is looking at, so he's a great follow on Twitter, but he engaged with Mark Means, and it was pretty funny. So anyways, yeah. I don't think personally that John Pryor is going to get a new, that this will be dismissed. I don't think, because what Lori Halas said, in which I think she is right on, I mean, of course she is, she's the lawyer, I'm just listening, but her argumentation and logic were sound and made sense to me. That, look, at the very least, John Pryor wants to force the prosecution to do a quick, indictment hearing. He wants a preliminary hearing for the indictment if they had to redo it. He doesn't want, wait around for the impaneled the jury's problematic, it's too small, it will always be problematic, blah, 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 blah. No, John Pryor wants to see what they have. Because remember, before he wanted to undo the cases, and he had to know things because he didn't know how to proceed. He was unclear. If he had to do it individually, it would be different than if it were joined. John Pryor, and it's not his fault. I mean, he hasn't done this before. He wants as much information beforehand. He needs to know, what do they know, so that I can make a story about it, so I can protect my client, which is his job. I understand, but no, honey, it ain't happening. I don't think. But we understand why he would want it to happen. So the judge heard all these things. He said that, and Lindsay Blake, who is the DA for that actual county, for the county that had the grand jury, she was the one who answered and provided lots of information, highlighting this difference between petit juries or trial juries and the rules and the law case supporting how grand juries run. How do I say this? So from my understanding, which isn't, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, this motion was made, and it had to be made because of a statute of limitations, like over a year ago. John Pryor made this to dismiss, and it held its place. So now the judge is addressing it, and now, so we're going, even though it seems like we're going backwards, he did make it in a timely manner, like after they were indicted. So we're now just dealing with this. And with everything else going on, I'm not sure that the prosecution had enough time, I guess was the problem, to write their argument, like to write it versus just say it. So it was an hour and a half. There was a coherent, I believe, argumentation and defense presented for both sides. And then the prosecution side had asked, could we please have an extension on like the written brief for this? And the judge said yes. He gave them an extension until April 6th. And then there's 2 weeks for the other people to respond. So John Pryor and maybe Archibald respond in briefs to the defense argument on April 20th. And then he will decide what we're gonna do. What Lori Halas said, and I believe Scott Wright also pointed out, was that whatever happens has to do with an appeal. This is a big case. It's very convoluted. They don't want it overturned if they get a guilty verdict on appeal. And saying that the grand jury process was unfair and not hearing that or dealing with it in a very detailed manner just brings up an appeal. So they want to make sure that doesn't happen. All right. The next case is the Morphew. Very Morphew case. So there's another dismissal. I was involved in something and represented myself pro se, which means you represent yourself. And let me just tell you, and it was just related to my child's education. It is very hard to represent yourself because you not only have to know the law, but you have to know how a law is applied in your state and what case, the rules of how to act in court, how to present your arguments. There's ways you have to learn how to do it, and you have to learn all the case law. It's really, that's why you have to go to law school. It's not easy. So, dismissing a case, it sounds horrible. What? Dismiss the case? F that. Guess what? This is something, I guess, that it happens in every case, and it happens multiple times. It is a placeholder for any sort of appeal. So you say, dismiss about this, dismiss about that, dismiss about, it's just what they do. But if you're on the other side of it, it sounds like, you can't just get rid of this. What are you talking about? We're already going. Just trust me, it's going to happen again and again. So the Morphew case, and he's got very high-powered attorneys. In fact, Scott Wright worked with one of them, I believe. They're from Denver, same area as he is. Very well known. He has all that money because he sold his house, he sold all his property, and he had his wife's inheritance that went to him. So he had lots of money. And he bought himself the best lawyers. They filed to dismiss the case based on the prosecutors providing false testimony and law enforcement not acting right. Yeah. They're all against my client, Your Honor. They're lying. So we talked about that they were going to do this, and now we know a little bit more about the detail. And one of it was, I thought maybe it would be the telematics. I said the telematics, the cellular data, and the DNA. Well, I was right on 2 of the 3. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad. They argued about the cellular data, that cellular service doesn't work well in that area, so how do they know he was running around the house? It could have just been the cell service, it wasn't reliable. And Profiling Evil brought up that same point. But we have a problem. Barry was questioned about his cell bouncing all over the house. Barry had a reasonable excuse. He was shooting 83 chipmunks at the time. There's chipmunks everywhere. 83. Had to do it. So, here's the problem. If his phone wasn't moving all around, why did he lie? Which it would have to be a lie, right? I was chasing around chipmunks. That's what made his phone bounce around. But they're saying, no, you can't prove that he was running around. That's unreliable data. Well, then we can prove he made up a story about running around. So, either he was running around and had a reason why, or he lied to the police. And why would he do that? I mean, if you knew you were sitting in your house and the cop said, hey, your cell phone was bouncing all around your property, wouldn't you say, I don't know why. I wasn't running around. I came home, went inside. Your data must be wrong, son. I mean, people question all the time the data, right? Like your thing's wrong. Barry didn't question it. Instead, he had a story about shooting chipmunks that I'm sure he thought was real clever. Do you believe Barry? And if you do, then you believe that's why his phone was bouncing around. And if you don't, because his lawyers are saying his phone didn't bounce around, then he's just a liar. And why is he lying? See, it doesn't help their argument. The second thing that they're arguing again, is about the DNA. Okay, we're going to go through this one more time. Iris. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Iris. Honey, it's relational DNA. Now, I know you like to call it a partial match because we know cognitively that makes people think match. Oh my God, it was the criminal. Wasn't the criminal, Iris. And you know that. Because if it was Barry's DNA that was somewhere, or a relative is his, you'd be like, no, it's a relatives match. It's not my client. His relatives, God, cousins, second cousins, they're all over the place. It's not my client, right? But when it's your client who needs some unknown subject, oh, well, yeah, it's a partial match. And we need more information on that partial match. Okay, it is a match of a relation. A brother, a sister, a mother, a cousin. I don't know the DNA. I believe they can tell you how close it might be to the actual person. It was not the criminals. It was on the glove box. DNA lasts for a long time on surfaces. The glove box is where you look to get out the manual, to check it, to change the oil. I know, Iris, I'm guessing you don't do much car work, but I know a lot of people who do. And even the best car takers and people just working at the place where you get your oil changed. Every car's a little bit different, Iris. Where are you going to look? Oh, the manual. And where's the manual kept, Iris? Did you ever look at your manual for your car, Iris? Or I'm assuming you probably don't deal with that because you're a high-powered attorney. Well, you keep the manual in the glove box. So let's just play probability. Let's just play speculation and a numbers game statistically. If a stranger is going to touch anywhere in your car, it's going to be on the doors. And, if they're working on your car, the glove box to get out the manual. So it's a relation of this criminal who essayed somebody, by the way. Didn't kidnap them, didn't unalive them, as far as we know. No, just essayed them. So it's not even similar to this case. But it was a relative of that person. So, Iris, why don't you take the DNA of that relative, and why don't you chase down all the mechanics that the Morphews took that vehicle to, and why don't you see who that relative is who matched that criminal? Because why would you do that? It wasn't the criminal there. It was a relative. It is not important. It is a red herring. Muddies the water. All right. That's the DNA crap. Oh, and gosh, that Cahill guy. The one who discharged his gun and lied about it and got in trouble. The one who spoke, allegedly, to the defense lawyers but didn't tell the people he was working for that he was going to talk to him, which is not protocol. Yeah, they're like, oh, he knew stuff. He knew the truth. He wanted to tell, and they didn't like it, and so they got rid of him. It wasn't because he was lying about what he was doing with his service revolver at home. No, it wasn't that he broke protocol and was speaking without permission the night before he was supposed to talk in a case to the defense attorneys. I mean, he breaks protocol. He doesn't do what is the steps he's supposed to do it. He doesn't follow procedure. I think that might get you in trouble at a job that's all about procedure. But, you know what? Iris thinks it's probably because he was the only one who really knew the truth. He and other people, they're all against Barry. It's a big conspiracy. Because we know white men with millions of dollars in Colorado are often, profiled. They're stereotyped. I mean, honey, please. All right, Iris, go back to your work. Let's just talk about an interesting theory by my friend. She doesn't know she's my friend. There's a fellow YouTuber. Her name's Linda. She has a channel called It's a Crime. Go, subscribe, watch. She is a mom. She is a person, though, who is meticulous. She does these deep dives, goes down the rabbit hole, but she doesn't just start doing things. She puts it in tables and aligns things, and man, do not do something that you don't want Linda to find out about. That's all I can say. Her kid is never getting away with anything because she is paying attention, and some people are more intuitive, and it clicks when things like, wait a minute, that doesn't fit. What is that song? Three of these things belong together. One of these things doesn't belong. Yeah, Linda would be a champ of that game. She just has that ability to see patterns. So she just put out a video this week, which is why I'm including it, about Bear, and it has to do with Barry's pattern of burying things. So she went through the affidavit and other, there's been a lot. We were talking about Linda's patterns and her theory, and it's just a theory. I'm adding to it probably, so it's one of, I'd call it a cuckoo for coconuts theory about Barry. But Barry buries things, so he was known for burying he buried furniture before they left town, like in his front yard in Indiana, dug with his, his digger, his little digger that, we'll get to more about it, put in furniture, I guess because he's cheap. I don't know how he's cheap though, because you could sell that stuff. I don't know. He didn't think you could sell it, I guess. I don't know. Put it in the ground, buried it back, and put alfalfa on it because alfalfa grows really fast, and that would cover it. I think he also mentioned burying kills, like when he was hunting. And he buried money, people reported. So Barry buries things. So if you remember now going to that little backhoe he had, there was something about he had hurt the blade. There was a blade problem. It broke the blade, and he was going, part of the affidavit was trying to track what he was doing on those days that right before and after Suzanne went missing. And he had made an appointment to see somebody about looking at their blade. Okay. So Barry buries things, and Barry's digger, his backhoe, little mini one, has a broken blade, and part of the affidavit talked about he was that week, I guess, speaking with Morgan, his co-worker, and she had been relating, I'm sure you've all heard it if you're listening to me, for sure, you're into true crime. I'm sure you heard the story about the serial killer who used pigs, because pigs will eat anything, and they would get rid of the body, and she had been talking about that, and he said, oh, I could bury a body in a way nobody would ever find it. Okay. So, Barry said he could bury a body that nobody would find it prior to this happening. Barry's backhoe is damaged, and we know he buries things. So we have a number of things that's interesting. At the time, it's early May, but this is up in the mountains, and the ground is kind of frozen. And it's also way rockier. They only lived there since 2018, so they'd only lived there a couple of years. If you were, I don't know, in a hurry, trying to bury something, and you were going to bury it deep so that no one could ever find it, and you're going really fast, you might hit a rock, like unexpectedly, because you don't know the terrain as well. Hypothetically speaking. Supposition. Speculation. And you might break your blade. Maybe. We don't know. Yeah, Linda also reported that, there were trees purchased right before this all happened. 3 trees. I don't know, where are those trees? Where were they planted? Were they planted on top of, I don't know, really deep hole? Or was something else planted that grows really fast? I don't know. I mean, would you use alfalfa in Colorado? Probably not, I don't think, but maybe. Or is there something that grows really fast in Colorado in May? I mean, maybe a landscaper would probably know, right? Is there any landscapers in the area that would know? Speculation, I don't know. It's just a cuckoo for coconuts theory. But I don't know, right? So I would be looking wherever there was newly planted trees or anywhere around there where the dirt looks disturbed more than other ones. Now it's been 2 years, but I don't know, probably close to where Andy was met with his brother-in-law in August with a shotgun. And the dogs were wanting to go onto Barry's property, and Barry said, no, you can't come look here. I don't know. Maybe there? I don't know. It's just a theory. It's probably nothing. Anyways, make sure you watch Linda, because I am telling you, she makes you think. And like I said, she's just looking for patterns. We don't know for sure. So let's see. So they argued, and we will hear, I guess when we hear about the judge's decision about if the case will be dismissed based on, you know, what Iris thinks. All right. Sorry, Iris. I know you have 2 other attorneys who work with you. Apologies. I guess I just think you're the smartest because you're a friend of Scott. And Scott's pretty smart. All right. There was a small update in the Ethan Crumley case. If you're watching IckEdMel, IckEdMel is Mel, or Melvin. He's located in southern Florida. He has a YouTube channel. He covers a lot of cases that other people don't, especially of minorities, and just the things that he's, I guess, always looking, and he tends to focus in and find them. But he watches things live, and people call in afterwards, and so it's pretty interesting. He watched the Ethan Crumley. It was a hearing that will happen every month because Ethan is being kept in the county jail instead of in the juvenile jail. And because he's a juvenile still, he's still 15, they have to talk about it each month and review it. And there was a big discussion the month before about it, and they had decided, because of safety reasons, I believe, they couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be hurt by other inmates, I guess they're not inmates, juveniles at the children's village, which most of us, I guess, would call kind of like a juvenile hall, but they call it children's village where he is. And they were worried about his mental health because a lot of the texts and things, he sounds like he hears things, sees things, imagines there's demons in his house. Kind of scary. Anyways, so his next hearing to talk about this again will be April 21st. They're going to keep him where he is. He seems to be doing better and all right there. And his guardian ad litem, which is the person who is now in charge of making decisions for him since his parents are in jail and unable. So the state took guardianship and assigned a guardian ad litem, somebody to make decisions. Her name is Deborah McKelvey, and she has been looking into how to educate him because he hasn't been educated since he's been in there, because he's in the adult county jail and not in the juvenile facility where they would have classes. And because he's 15 and because of the time that he went in there, they couldn't get him. I don't know why, because he was arrested soon after he perpetrated this mass shooting in November. So I don't know why he didn't start in December under some sort of school thing, but they didn't sign him up for any virtual school in time for him to be counted as going the whole semester. So somehow he can't go to school, which people get pulled out of school due to suspensions and other issues. They get expelled. The ad litem made I believe it was her or his attorney, Paulette Lofton. Somebody made the argument that schools count heads, for money, and that if you miss that date, they do it twice a year. I don't know what she's talking about, and Michigan might be different, but people move all during the year. They don't say you can't come to school because you came after we counted heads. That's not really a thing in real public schools. So I don't know if it's because it would be a virtual school online. But anyways, he hasn't been educated, and that is a problem because he's a minor. So they're going to try to, I guess when you're 16, you can do GED work. I don't know. This is all screwed up, and it seems to me they charged him as an adult, and because they want him to be an adult, he has to stay where adults are, and then the education process has to wait until he's 16. I don't know if they're benefiting themselves so they can charge him as an adult, or if it was really to keep him safe, to keep him at the county. It all seems like this kid never had a shot. A white kid, and he was in a good school system. But still, parents out to lunch, providing him with weapons, providing him how to shoot the weapon, ignoring the fact he was talking about seeing ghosts and demons. Knew he shouldn't be alone, but left him at school and didn't tell them that they had purchased him a gun 4 days before and taught him how to use it. It boggles the mind. And then the system's like, well, we can't educate him. Well, he's an adult, but he's not an adult. The kid got screwed. Backwards, forwards, from here to Sunday. There are ways psychologically to create monsters. We know serial killers tend to have horrible home lives. And they tend to have domineering mothers. I mean, there's like formulas that when we look backwards, we can see what happened. It's weird that we want to perpetuate that type of like attachment disorders, and I don't know. There's no good, like most things that we see that end up with these horrible tragedies, is there is no real clear answer, because if it was, people would do it, right? I mean, people aren't just bad. But anyways, he'll turn 16 in April, and then I guess he'll do a GED program, or he can do something else. He has to be 16 for this thing to take place. So, amongst everything else, he's not allowed to be educated until he's 16 due to some rules. And I think they said in about 45 days they're going to discuss the forensic testing. I think that's the psychological testing. I don't know. There's people online, somebody claimed on Vinny Palatino on Court TV, oh, he's in it for the fame. He wants to be famous. Okay. A, where'd you get your child development degree? And B, I don't think, there's so much wrong here. Before any of this happened, he was saying to his mom he thought there were ghosts in the house. He heard people. He wrote on his test that he wanted the voices to stop. That is schizophrenia or something very close to it. That's not, I want to become famous, so I'm going to shoot up the school. The other people said they wanted to become famous. They wrote it down in their diaries. I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but this case, this kid, this is why the parents are being charged. This is why. Because it's not just this child. He was troubled. He was sick. And instead of helping him, somebody who thinks they hear voices and think there's demons, they give him a gun. And here, let's take you to the shooting range. Here's how to use it. Oh, and when you're doing it in school, we're not going to tell the school, hey, and this whole business of, I've heard from other people, well, yeah, but the parents, they said they locked it up. I don't believe, this is my opinion, my speculation, but from everything I understand, the dad said that as soon as there was the school shooting, then he made a 911 call. Oh, my kid has my gun. Forgetting that all over social media they had written, here's your gun, your present. Enjoy it. I mean, they're not very good liars. Whatever. People make mistakes. It's horrible. We'll hear more about, this is going to take a while, right? I'm sorry. I don't see, the kid looks like he doesn't even have the benefit of being cute, unfortunately. He looks like somebody you would like to hate, but I can't hate a 15-year-old who was hearing voices and his parents decided to give him a gun instead of taking him to a psychologist. I don't. It'd be like leaving your 5-year-old at home who talks about fires all the time going, hey, here's some matches. Here's how to use the matches. And having them go to your friend's house and not tell them that they have matches in their backpack. And your friend going, wow, he talks about fires a lot. And you're going, yeah, I gotta go. You said you'd watch him, right? Bye. That's the analogy I see. That's why the parents are in trouble in this. It's not like every school shooter's parent should be charged for manslaughter. No. It is that these specific people knew that child was ill. They knew he had a problem. And instead of helping him, gave him a weapon and took him to learn how to use it and left him at a place and didn't tell the people that said, hey, he's really talking about using weapons a lot. Didn't say, yeah, we bought him one. He has it. We showed, like, no information. Instead it was, hey, we gotta go. It's your job to teach them. Bye. Sorry. My background is in teaching. I've been in schools. These people, I would be mad at them. They didn't tell the school. They knew what they had done. They saw his test. They saw that he said, the voices won't stop. There's blood everywhere. Are you kidding me? And they just, oh, she had to go ride horses. F that. There is some responsibility there. I don't know how much, and I don't know if it rises to being, but there's, that was awful. And that child's life is ruined. Yes, he killed 4 other people. Their lives are ruined too. But he's not, I can't say he's just as much of a victim, but my God. Those people did nothing. He was troubled. They should have gotten him help. Or at least told the school what was going on. And not provided an underage person with a weapon as a gift. That's against the law in Michigan. So there. Sorry. The whole thing is screwy. All right. Last case, before I check and see what happened with Naomi and that press conference that they're holding. The West case. So what we didn't know is that as the investigation was taking place before they were arrested, their children had been removed, the other 2 biological and the 2 other adopted children, from Trezell and Jacqueline West. They are the parents from Bakersfield, California, who moved to Cal City and said that their 2 youngest adopted sons, Orrin and Orson, which their biological family named Sincere and Classic, they said that those children, they just ran away and blah, blah, blah. Well, come to find out through the investigation, again, looking at all their probably devices and what they texted, and they were, the children probably never made it to Cal City when they reported them missing. They had been missing 3 months prior. So, but while they were finding all that out, the authorities had removed, after the children were reported missing in December of 2021, in 2022 they were removed from the home. But the Wests were allowed to see them on, was it bi-weekly visits? Yeah, twice weekly for the past 13 months. They were in protective custody. They wanted to continue this in jail. And the prosecution was like, okay, look, have you read your indictment? Okay, again, this is my opinion, the way I'm saying it. They obviously didn't say, hey, have you read your indictment? But the indictment included that minors, so one of the kids, were influenced or to somehow assist or take part in the crimes. Yeah, they're not seeing them. That's done. The children have seen some things. No. So now that the indictments came down, they said they will not be coming to the jail for supervised visits. You will not talk to them through Zoom. There's a protective order. They need to be protected from you, which now they're assumed to be innocent, but if the charges are accurate, yeah, they need to be protected from them. And they could be, part of the case. They don't want them to threaten them to tell a different story. You know what I mean? All of that. Anyways, that was, so it happened on Tuesday, but we didn't know about it because remember, or maybe it happened in there, we didn't know exactly about this protective order because everything was gag ordered and things were then sealed. We didn't know nothing, but a court officer provided clarification on the criminal protective order, saying that it barred them from having contact with all the other children. And let's see, and we found that out on Thursday. So because that's all sealed, we won't hear much else. All right, I'm gonna see what the updates are on the Naomi Ariane case, and I'll be right back. All right, so that's the update from the True Crime Grapevine for this episode 6 week, and I update every Tuesday about so. Stay safe, stay interested, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye.